Welcome everyone. We're now live on Facebook, and welcome to my three wonderful speakers for this evening on tonight's topic of sacred response, continuing the conversation on community resilience in changing times. So thank you to the three of you for joining me on this conversation this evening. So I'll just very briefly introduce our speakers before they introduce themselves. So first of all, we have Katherine HALE. Welcome, Katherine. Katherine is a trauma resolution educator, coach and guide in sex, love and relationships, and is an advocate for post-traumatic growth at a level of society and culture. So welcome, Katherine.
Thank you.
And we have Julia Paulette Hollenbery. Julia is an author, therapist and body worker, guiding people to satisfying relationships, meaningful work, and a passionate life. Welcome, Julia. And we have SUZI CROCKFORD. Hi, SUZI. SUZI is a visionary writer, a shamanic healer, and she teaches animist and shamanic pathways to finding our deeper connection to all that is. Welcome, SUZI.
Thank you.
So lovely to have the three of you on this conversation. Thanks very much for joining me. David, I think, is going to pop in some moment very soon as well, and he's just going to share a little bit of his. He's going to be supporting us in the background on the call this week. I'm just going to start by reading something on the topic of sacred response. I was looking for, each week I've been reading something from different teachers and, you know, amazing leaders we've got out in the world that are helping us at this very strange time. And I couldn't quite find something that really resonated for me on this topic. So I decided to write something myself. So I'll just read what I've written. There are many ways to view the challenges of our current time. For many of us, life has significantly changed in one way or another. Whether it's the loss of jobs, separation with our loved ones, suddenly being alone, being grounded at home for the first time in our lives, having to wear masks in shops, or spending much more time with our family than we've ever done before. Many of us can agree, whether we like it or not, something has been imposed on us that has changed our lives. There are a variety of different ways that we can view what's happening, and if we choose to, we can have a choice about how to engage and respond. Maybe we can consider within this imposed moment of pause, the destructive trajectory that we were on as a human race. You don't have to be spiritually inclined or scientifically minded to see that we were on a mission of self-annihilation, destroying the planet and her creatures in the process. We weren't listening to the hints and signs that nature was showing us of all our self-destructive behaviours, and so inevitably, nature has taken charge and interrupted our mindless behaviour and given us an opportunity for something else. So where do we go for inspiration in these times? Where do we look for answers about what this is all about? Do we source those answers from our media and its fear-driven messages? Or do we take this opportunity to look inwardly, discovering more about ourselves, what really matters when all the doing falls away? Do we take the chance to take stock of the people in our lives, and if we really take time to care about them? Do we even know our neighbours and the land immediately where we live? And what kind of response do we want to elicit? An idea that we're a victim to something happening to us, and at some point, any day now, we're going to be rushing back to normal? Or can we elicit a sense of gratitude for being interrupted in our destructive pattern and engaging something deeper? A sacred response. The sacred can be defined as something holy and deserving of respect. In my sense, it's also something deeper in myself and all of life. The being part of us. The soul not only within human beings, but within all of life and our earth. My sense is what has been imposed on us is a moment of opportunity, a gift, an interrupting of our pattern of destruction, an opening of a possibility of a new way of being, making us aware of what's really important and what's really essential in the things that we do on a daily basis. Out of all the things that we buy habitually, which of these things do we really need? When life is quiet and we're not running all over the place, what really matters to us? Maybe this is a gesture of kindness, a loving interruption of our fast-paced lives, where we were running on the surface of ourselves in a trauma-driven way, giving us an opportunity to slow down and to regain a natural, healthy rhythm. This, I feel, is what it means to engage a sacred response, to engage that deeper inquiry, to engage in these questions from our heart space and from the instinct in our bellies. Maybe it's an opportunity to turn from messages externally to listen to the messages internally, to be aware of our inspirations and our visions, to pay attention to our dreams, to bring to life those projects we've been thinking of doing and putting off for so many years, to speak in ways that maybe haven't been able to be heard before, to notice the whispers that come to us while we walk in the woods, and most importantly, to trust the impulse of truth that lies within. So there you go. That was my contribution in trying to define what is a sacred response. Do any of you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yay, that was beautiful, Catherine.
Oh, thanks, Julia. Thank you. Anything else? Anything you'd like to say about your interpretation of what you feel is a sacred response that we'd like to elicit in this conversation today?
Well, you said an awful lot, it seems to me.
I did. I covered quite a lot in that, I think. But yeah. Yes, Susie.
Just that I was concerned before you read that thing that somehow sacred response wouldn't be as all-encompassing as I wanted it to be, but actually you've made it really all-encompassing, and that's beautiful to hear, because I think all-encompassing is what it needs to be, and an understanding that there isn't really anywhere that isn't sacred is a really, really fundamental part of how we can have what we're clearly going to call a sacred response.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Catherine, did you want to add anything at this point? No, you're okay. Great. Thank you. So I can see David has popped in, but we can't see him. We can, there's a little flash of David. Hi, David. Welcome.
Hi.
So David, did you just want to say a little bit about what you'll be contributing to this tonight?
Yes, so I'm the background boy, the link-up man, and what I'm doing is linking the meeting as it appears on Facebook with you guys on Zoom. Mm-hmm. So that what I'm inviting you all to do, if you're watching on the Facebook event, is if you have any questions or any comments, to stick them in the chat box, and then I can relay them on to the panel, and that way you can all be included. So it's not just a bunch of experts talking to a passive audience, but a thriving community, hopefully across the world, and we're all participating and creating something magical together.
Yeah, great. Thanks, David. Thank you, and thanks for keeping an eye on that for us. That it's a big weight off my mind. So thank you, and I can just focus on being.
Weight off my mind that I got in.
Great. So we'll check back in with you later and see if there's any comments or questions from our live audience on Facebook. Great. Thanks, okay. David. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so yeah, just like now to welcome you to share a bit more about yourself, why you felt inspired to say yes to this conversation, and yeah, a little bit of backstory from you about why you felt to speak on this topic. Be really interested to hear. So should we start with Catherine? That's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. it's like, I think what called me is there's this need for a different medicine right now in our world. There's a need to, from my perspective, to meet the collective trauma that's happening, to meet that traumatic response in people's bodies, and to be able to guide them into a different way. I feel like that's what I'm here to do in my life. And so when the opportunity came to be on this call, I thought, oh, here is another platform through which I can contribute and to share some of that medicine which wants to be shared.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. Julia?
Well, I guess I know quite a bit about living through not easy times. I didn't have an easy start in life. And along the way, I've learned quite a bit about what it takes, not only to survive, but to thrive, how to find the resources that are necessary. So, I care passionately that we all do as well as we can in this challenging situation. So I'm very pleased to be here and have this chat and see what emerges, what we co-create and what wants to be created through and with us. So thank you.
Right. Thank you, Julia. Thank you. And Susie?
Sorry, slow to the unmute. I said yes because I just think that there need to be as many alternative voices and narratives as possible to mainstream media, and the thought that we can get together in these beautiful little groups with you to explore what those alternative narratives might be with such a range and a diversity of voices was really appealing to me. I really like doing stuff together with other people, like Julia said, because of the magic of what we can co-create together, and we can be reasonably confident that we're coming from a similar-ish place, but we don't know one another. And so there's the deliciousness of the exploration together, which I hope is also therefore interesting and perhaps more revealing to those on Facebook who are listening or who listen later, because we're not coming from a we already know what one another are going to say kind of in crowd position. So the unspoken will be spoken between us, and I think that's always really interesting.
Yeah, wow, thank you. It's got me really excited, actually. So I can already feel a common thread of something we're weaving together. It feels really magical. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, when I was thinking about the three of you and what I know and what I don't know of you, which is always limited, I was just thinking of some questions I wanted to particularly ask to each of you, just to find out a little bit more about your work and your connection with what's happening at this time. So Catherine, I'll start with you if that's okay. So my question to you, Catherine, is in your work, have you seen a shift in how people are looking at their difficulties at this time? And have you, and have you noticed a change in your approach? Yeah, so have you noticed a change in your clients? And have you noticed have you had to adapt in your approach to working with people since we've begun the pandemic?
I'm going to answer your question backwards.
Okay, go for it.
So like a year ago, I decided to change my business focus, and then suddenly we're in the pandemic, and there was a lot of personal stuff happening for me at that time as well. And thankfully, I'm the kind of person that can see opportunities rather than catastrophes. And so I realized that this was an opportunity to begin to kind of like restructure and reframe and reorient my work to be more meaningful, more purposeful, and to target it at the people who it would work the best on. So there was kind of like a falling away that happened to begin with. And throughout the year, that kind of process of honing in on, okay, what wants to come next? That process of like deep listening, deep inquiry. And everything I teach is a reflection of my own personal journey. So, you know, to be going through menopause during this time has been quite an experience. You know, I lost my father at the beginning of the pandemic back in March last year. So I've been through some major initiations in this time, which has really invited me to step up, to step in, to step out, you know, to have this kind of different approach to how I'm relating to my work. And so then in terms of my clients, you know, I particularly focus on helping people to resolve trauma. And of course, what I'm seeing is that people's trauma is like really activated right now. So, you know, anyone who has a particular trauma wounding around control, manipulation, that's very active and very alive in their systems. So I'm seeing those people either in a place of deep struggle and conflict within themselves, or are beginning to emerge into, oh, hold on a minute, I can do this a little bit differently. There's something here that's been shown on the outside, which is actually a mirror to what's happening on the inside. So I see a kind of wide range of responses in clients. But what I see is the health, the direction of health, is when those clients are beginning to take on the skills of resourcing. And so what I mean by that is, like the old paradigm of working in the healing modality is to kind of like go to where it's difficult, right? Go to where it's painful. Let's go and kind of get in there. And the way I work is like, well, let's start where it's healthy. So even amongst all of this, even amongst kind of like, you know, our civil liberties being kind of changed, everything that you referred to earlier being changed, it's like, what within that is still healthy? And can we lean into that? Can we resource into that? So that might be, you know, connecting with nature. It might be finding an ancestor who's healthy. It might be leaning into a galaxy that feels healthier than this one right now. When I've been teaching clients that, then they can move into the place where it's difficult, knowing that there's always somewhere to come back to. And that really is the kind of the basis of the work that I do now, is teaching people how to navigate between those two territories and leaning into and amplifying health at all times. So I don't know if that completely answered what you were asking, but
it does. And you know, in my practice, I can really resonate with what you're talking about. And you know, we call it titration. So kind of rooting in what's healthy and kind of touching into the difficulty. Yeah, it's very similar to what you're describing. So it's something, yeah, I personally resonate with, and definitely something we've touched on in previous weeks, how important that is right now, is to find resource. So yeah, thank you for talking about that, Catherine. Great. So Julia, I'll move on to your question. So Julia, I know you've recently published a book. Congratulations. and you support people to live the full version of themselves. Have you seen this change, and how has that change manifested since the pandemic began?
It seems to me that everyone is overwhelmed. In a way, gone are, you know, cute ideas of, well, they're not gone, but it's changed, right? It's not glib, any notion of, you know, living my best self. Everyone is overwhelmed with a complete deluge of information, a complete deluge of many emotional responses. The news, the neighbours, the dogs, the cats, the teenage children, the in-laws, the supermarkets, everything. Work, obviously. So there is overwhelm and there is tremendous fear, as Catherine was saying. You know, all of our old fears are being triggered, and that's a lot of fear. So maybe we're all going to repeat the same thing this evening, you know, like all there is to do is to find the resource repeatedly in many different places. I can speak in more detail maybe about that afterwards, but is to keep finding the resources and to keep feeling the feelings and to keep staying sane, connected to oneself and to the people around. And as you evoked beautifully at the beginning, you know, to the trees and the birds and the animals around, the animals that are on our call this evening as well, not visible on the camera.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, I guess, a shift to living fully in a grand sense, to living fully this moment, living fully this moment with this person, living fully this moment with this situation. Something like that.
Yeah. No, I get the sense you're saying that, you know, living fully can be an outward thing or an inward thing, right? So it's, you know, we can live more fully inwardly. It doesn't have to be an outer expression in the world. That was the sense I got as you were speaking. Thank you, Julia. So Susie, your question. So I don't know a huge amount about your work personally, Susie, but what I do know is that you used to run a lot of workshops and teach people to do different crafts, making drums, rattles, things like that. So I'm just wondering how your work has changed since the pandemic, and how you've had to adapt your work, and what the themes you're seeing as well.
Well, so the pandemic put paid to running drum and rattle making workshops, but bizarrely caused many people to suddenly decide that they needed a drum or a rattle. And so, you know, just at the beginning where I was thinking kind of, oh, okay, I'm stuffed then. Actually, you know, lots of amazing, wonderful people were suddenly going, oh, I'd like to order a drum, please. And after that initial surge, what happened then was, as well as running drum and rattle making workshops, I also teach shamanism and work as a shamanic healer. So I teach a kind of witchy animist shamanic practice and work as a shamanic healer. And I mean, now in retrospect, it sounds like such a stupid thing to say, but at the time I was, oh no, how's this going to work? You know, everything's going on Zoom. How's it going to work? Surely nobody's going to be interested in doing any of this on Zoom. But in fact, everything very easily and seamlessly transferred itself onto Zoom. And in retrospect, well, of course it did, because the work that I'm doing takes place in non-ordinary reality. And so we don't need to be in the same room at all. So yeah, that's been the kind of the sort of revelation, if you like, is how willing people are to work on Zoom. And there are obviously some who are not, and I'm very, very much hoping to be able to work in person again later on in the year. And then the themes that I've seen emerging through that work in other people are you know, again, slightly repeating what's been said already, but the theme of connection and how fundamental it is in both directions. So on the one hand, we've lost our connection. So on the other, we've realized how incredibly important it is. But then again, back on the other hand, we're also, I believe, experiencing how profoundly we are connected, even though we don't feel connected, when we experience the fear in the collective, the anxiety in the collective, all these things that if we look into our own, you know, pockets, perhaps there's no real reason for us as an individual to feel this way, but it's there in the field amongst us all. And so I think there's a, you know, an extremely rare person who's not, to a degree, feeling a level of anxiety, which is this strange polarity between the actual connection that we share with one another and our perceived loss of connection and our realization of the extraordinary, excruciating importance of that connection to one another, to our tribe, but to the modern human world, which hopefully even more people have been waking up to through this, to just how much actually they do love it.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And I think something you've touched on there, which I could really resonate with, is that, you know, we were kind of forced into doing this in a way we would never have imagined doing before, but so much has come out of it, these, you know, different ways of connecting that we wouldn't have thought would have been as effective before, and now we're finding they are actually. And I personally feel like it's connecting us more into the reality of our oneness. You know, that's something I've seen. And you know, how therapy does work over Zoom, I never would have thought it does, but it does, and it's very effective, even in, you know, real felt sense, feeling in the body, you know, feeling a client over Zoom. You know, we've all, I'm sure, experienced that, and it works. I was, you know, when it first happened, I was just like, this isn't going to work. This is impossible. But it really does work. And I think that's just opened up so much more. So much more has become possible because of that. And I don't think it's something we would have done willingly. So I think that's been a real gift of this, what's happened recently. So yeah, thank you, Susie. Okay, so I'm going to move into some questions now that I prepared in advance that you have already had. So we're going to just open up these questions and just, yeah, see who feels moved to respond. If you feel moved to respond when you do, you can just come in. So first question is, how are you connecting to and living resilience personally in this time? Susie?
I can answer that. So how I'm doing it is by making absolutely sure that every single day I go for a really good long walk, not just to be out there taking my government approved of exercise, but to go out and listen really deeply to the whispers in the mist, as it was tonight, and to give myself really fully. I mean, this is, you know, this is what I do. And yeah, I truly feel that within the pandemic and within the lockdown and the separation and all the rest of it, it's only now that I have, and at a, you know, reasonably great age, actually finally given myself permission to properly drop in and to listen and to allow myself to speak on behalf of nature without some insane little inspector sitting on my shoulder going, that's your ego, you made it up, shut up, for God's sake, they're going to all think you're mad, you know, blah, 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 blah. And that I've witnessed that, again, a lot more out there in the collective, that it's okay, it's a thing, it's become a theme, we're allowed, we're starting to understand that we are nature, and that as nature, it is part of the responsibility of those of us who are willing to stand up to speak on behalf of nature, to stand up and say, well, actually, that tree really doesn't want you to do that, or whatever it is, and not to feel a fraud and not to feel a fool and not to censor. So I went off piste there, but anyway.
No, but it was a good off-piste. Thank you. Thank you. Julia?
I'm very happy to share some of my pieces of resilience. Body, first of all, for me, really, really important to have a felt sensual sense of my body. So for me, that is very often a gorgeous morning shower. I just love feeling my body. Any kind of personal care, that seems really important. For me also, long walks, yoga, feeling my body is essential. I need to maintain, create beauty at home, create order. When things get messy, as they do, if I leave that, I'm lost. So I have to keep coming back to creating order and creating beauty, especially when we're stuck indoors 23 hours a day. Nature essential. Again, it seems as if we have no variety, right? Our lives are the same. We're not going out to wherever we used to go out to. But I have been finding that if I go out into nature, it awakens me, freshens me. I'm not bored. It brings stimulation and connection. And I do a lot of reaching out to other people, maintaining, ensuring that there is social contact and social communication, whatever it is. A lot of reaching out to maintain the networks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I think we're all going to say very similar things, aren't we? So yeah, Catherine?
Very much what Susie and Julia have been speaking into. But what I've also been discovering on my long walks over Dartmoor is like building in challenge and finding the place where I can overcome challenge. So today's challenge was trying to cross a stream, and it was quite tricky. The rocks were very, very slippery. I was trying to find a stick that I could kind of like anchor into the ground, and they were very rotten. But eventually I found my way across, and just that feeling of like success, accomplishment, like I can do this. You know, on a nervous system level, that build, you know, that's supporting that deep place of mobility, of I can, of regulation. And what I've done more recently, I've become a very avid watcher of the weather forecast. So I'm now structuring my week around the weather. And so this morning, I worked on Sunday to have this morning off because it wasn't going to be torrential rain. It was going to be like misty instead. So I took myself up to Dartmoor to enjoy the mist. And, you know, I'm there and I'm like listening to the birdsong. And I'm watching the kind of drops of water that are hanging from the branches and just like deeply noticing. And as Susie was speaking into earlier, you know, in that moment of deep watching and listening, then there comes all of the insights that I need. So it's like I'm living my questions. Something around work, it's like, what do I need to do about that? It's okay, I'll go for a walk. I don't need to sit here thinking about it. It's just like, it will come to me. So the earth is kind of speaking to me. Spirit is speaking to me when I'm in those places, when nature is around me. And just the joy of that, you know, today, the first day of spring, the joy of being out there. Yesterday, I saw a grey heron and a green woodpecker. And it's just like, thank you. Thank you for having this time, this opportunity, for having so much cleared away that I can just be in the moment, in the beauty of the moment, in deep appreciation and reverence of the moment. And asking the question, what am I in devotion to? What does that, how does that want to move through me now?
Wow. I feel quite emotional. I can really feel that. I don't know if it's the same for the three of you, but from what you've all said, I feel like something has deepened. You know, I feel like you're very connected women, but something, another level has deepened in this time. That's the sense I get from what you're saying. Susie, did you want to add something?
Just that, yeah, what really came up for me as Catherine spoke was the sense that one of the tremendous blessings that we've got from this time of being, you know, locked down is more space to be quiet and to ask the really important questions. And so, you know, yes, to be asked, to be able to ask, what is the mist telling me, or whatever, and to be answered by the body of a heron or whatever, but also, you know, inside, when we don't have the good fortune to be out, to be able to ask really simple questions like, what's the kindest thing, or does this really matter, whatever it is. And I think it seemed to me, I mean, this is through the window of Facebook and Instagram and stuff, but it does seem like more and more people are asking more and more significant questions and finding the kind of intrinsic answers rather than the extrinsic answers. So we are remembering how to follow our hearts and remembering how to follow love and how to follow grief, rather than how to chase the new whatever plastic thing. And that feels like mega important.
And if nothing, nowhere else, it seems amongst the four of us, something has shifted. So something has deepened, something has slowed down, something is more, you know, we can hear something more. So yeah, wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you, ladies, for sharing on that. Okay, so next question. What is community resilience in your life, and what does it mean to you? Susie?
I can answer, but I don't want to be the one that's constantly yabbering first.
That's okay. Okay.
For me, community resilience is really bound up in the community part of that statement. And for me, the kind of fundamental part of community resilience is the understanding that my community is more than human. And that to feel deeply in connection with not just, you know, the people who I have the good fortune to share a house with, my husband, my sons, but also to feel profoundly in connection with the stream that flows outside my door, the fields that are at the back of the house. I have the immense good fortune to live on Dartmoor, so compared to falling in love with a lot of places, it is pretty simple. And not that I wasn't in love before, but that real sense of I live in a greater community here, and it is living and it is breathing, and as much as it matters to me, I matter to it because I am participant in it. And so I think one of the fundamental things that we need as human beings to thrive is a sense of belonging, and to feel that I belong here in this place has been really important. So that kind of the belonging aspect of resilience is the community aspect to me.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Susie. And it immediately leads me to want to question Julia on this, because you are, out of the four of us, you are living in London. And I'm curious how different it is in an urban environment, you know, how different it feels to you and how you're living that differently.
I think that this time has made us all be clearer who are the communities to which we belong. Because with all the stress, we are being much more selective about who we have the energy and time to be in contact with. So for me, my family, my biological family, has become much more important. Yes, my relationship with my daughter's father, my partner, the pets, the neighborhood, our street has become so important. When somebody was ill in our street and had to go to hospital, it was down to us, the neighbors either side, you know, it really mattered. Our street pulled together. We did one evening, we all came out and we sang and played Hey Jude, and that was a really good fun thing to do all together amongst the craziness. So it's all those very local conversations, and I don't imagine in that respect that London is really any different to anywhere else. It's the people in my street and the next street and the next few streets that I bump into in the park or down by the brook, or and it's all those little conversations that we have, that we've had sharing all the way through, that has been so important. And the sense of us belonging to this web. And when one of us is unwell or something happens, then other people pick up the slack, and that's become evident in this time. And that's really, really beautiful. Whatever people's situations, you know, you know, the people with the pets, the people with the children, you know, everyone in there, the joggers, everyone in their different places. And I feel as if our conversation this evening is a bit like ripples of water, and that we're all, you know, echoing the similar things, because of course the other layer of the community that I have been so valuing, the same as the rest of you, is, you know, the trees and the birds that come to visit, and the fox at the end of the garden, and those relationships, those reciprocal relationships too.
Thank you, Julia. It's nice to hear that it's very similar in a very different environment. That's been a real common, what you've just described has been a real common conversation so far, that we've just got to know our neighbours for the first time. I know I can definitely say that. I've got to know my neighbours for the first time after being here for years, and we've been pulling together locally and looking after each other. I think that's just such an amazing thing that's come out of this time. So it's really nice to hear that's happening where you are as well. Catherine, do you have anything to say on this? Yeah.
Yeah, what I've been struck by is our willingness to keep finding a way to stay connected. You know, transferring like all our work onto Zoom. You know, last night I had a Zoom call with 10 members of my family, and you know, it's like we want to stay connected. We can't meet up, so this is how we're going to do it. And you know, it was so touching. It was so touching to have them all there. You know, we've planned, I think it's 5 family holidays which we've had to cancel, because every time it's like, oh, we're going into another lockdown, we can't quite meet up yet. But just seeing that collectively, just going into the greengrocers in town, and just that deeper level of like, oh, I haven't seen you for a while, have you been okay? Yeah, no, I haven't had COVID, I'm all right. Just, you know, I bought loads the last week that I came in, so I haven't been in for a while. There's just this kind of level of noticing and care and attentiveness that is, even in Totnes, it's discernibly different to how it's been previously. So yeah, I just love how we've got that capacity, the determination to just keep finding a way.
Yeah, lovely. And echoing what Susie was saying as well about how family, well, I think all 3 of you said it actually, about how families become more important. Actually, it wasn't Susie, I think it was Julia that said that, but yeah, being more aware of what is important and the relationships that are important and giving more time and energy to that. Again, what a gift. And noticing the people around us and checking in with each other more than we maybe would have done before. So yeah, great. Thank you. So just checking in with David, he just said there's just been a comment from someone called Jenny saying she knows Susie and she just said to say hi and her work is amazing. So so hi from Jenny. So okay, great. So we'll move on to the next question. What role does sacred response play in your life? And how has that changed since the pandemic? And we've already maybe touched on a bit of that already, but maybe just thinking about the question particularly of what does sacred response play? What is sacred response playing? What role, sorry, is sacred response playing in your life right now?
Shall I go again?
You're welcome to, yeah. Radio silence.
So to me, sacred response is implicit in the idea of sacred response is the deliberateness of our response and taking time to consider our response, so that it's authentically a response rather than a reaction. And I think that's really super important, to be responding rather than reacting to what's going on, so that we don't allow the kind of, you know, the fear or the anger or the narrative really of any description to run away with us. And instead, to me, what sacred response speaks most strongly to, I suppose, is constantly, Catherine used the expression earlier, leaning back in to what do I know, what do I love, where am I safe, where is my connection? And that when we're responding from that place rather than reacting from any of the other places we might find ourselves, then we can be in partnership with the sacred, and we can, in that place of our participating in the collective, we can be putting something beautiful in, something nourishing, something nurturing, a sense of peace, a sense of calm, a sense of perhaps for someone else something to lean into, rather than just adding another nuance of fear and anxiety. So I think it's a really important job that we all have, to find where our sacred response is, so that we can share it for each other.
Yeah. And a question that comes to mind as you say that is, are we able to engage with a sacred response without coming in here? You know, is that really what's core to a sacred response, is to lean back in more deeply to ourselves? Just to add that in. But yeah, Julia or Catherine, would you like to? Julia? Oh, go on.
Either or.
Say again, sorry.
Either or, if Catherine wants to.
That's fine, yeah. That's right. Go on, Julia.
So to me, at the heart of sacred response is the deep respect for the other, is really seeing and hearing and feeling and honouring the other. And all the same things for ourselves. So so yes, I can echo what Susie was saying about slowing down and, you know, taking breaths and coming back to the body, and coming in, as you were saying before, responding. So it is indeed a response and not a reaction. And there's something, I think, also about really articulating our truth. Like, there's no time to waste now. you know, and also there are so many people now who have so many different perspectives and ideas and opinions about what's happening, and everybody is doing their best, right? Everybody wants the best outcome. So there's a piece, I think, about being in service, as you invoked at the beginning of the call, being in service to the highest good or to the best for everybody. And finding the way to say what we need to say so that we're not stuck at the same time as honouring where the other people are who may hold different responses and opinions. Like, it's that honouring dance, and that isn't easy to do on mindless and automatic. It does take wishing for it to be so, and it does take bothering for it to be so. And I also think that the reward is worth that bothering, you know, the reward for us and for the others. Whoever it is, you know, is worth the bothering.
Thank you. Thank you. Catherine?
I have to write a few things down, otherwise my menopausal brain kind of loses the threads. But yeah, I think the key piece that I'm here with around sacred response in this moment is about being in right relationship. About being in right relationship to what is. So speaking into some of what's already been mentioned here, but right relationship to ourselves, to each other, right relationship to the earth. It's like, how can I keep deepening into that rightness of that relationship? How can I keep showing up? Like, what's being asked of me now? And for me, one of my kind of explorations around this is creating kind of rhythm and routine in my life that actually leaves and creates the spaces for this kind of daily devotion to happen. Instead of like, oh, you know, just kind of being on that kind of hamster wheel, but actually like, this is the dedicated time to check in around these relationships. And what needs changing? What are the needs here? Are they being met? What needs tweaking? What needs like changing on a big scale? So that's kind of been my personal inquiry, ongoing inquiry in this time. And then, you know, within that, holding that place of like the tension of difference, the tension of not knowing, the tension of like confusion, uncertainty, and just being with that and not trying to kind of rush to some kind of resolution or knowledge or moving on, but actually just to sit in the uncomfortability and to find comfort in the uncomfortability.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad you named that, actually, and I am going to come to you, Susie, and it's made me think actually that is something that I would really love us to speak to in considering a sacred response. You know, something we're all seeing, I'm sure, in our lives and in the world around us is these polarities that are happening, that are becoming more and more extreme. And the, you know, the extremes of also, you know, incredible fear, real terrified fears that some people are in, and what people like us are doing, which we're, you know, trying to find deep resource and ways to be with that unknown. Just wondering how we could speak to people around how we can engage sacred response to deal with that. I mean, you've just touched on that, Catherine, what you've said. I just wondered if Susie, I'm aware you wanted to speak as well, but yeah, don't know. That's just a question I feel like I'd love us to explore, how we can support people to engage a sacred response to all of that. You know, something deeper, to actually hold those polarities and not get caught in them so much, maybe. Susie, do you want to say something?
Yeah, so what I wanted to say kind of speaks to that a bit anyway, just that what came up for me so strongly when Catherine spoke about right relationship is that somebody far wiser than me once said, all suffering is resistance. And that in a way, perhaps that's one of the single most useful things we could offer people to help them to try to arrive in a place where they can start to unpack what their sacred response might be, is that when we step out of resistance and into acceptance of what is, that then we can start to find our true relationship with what is, rather than what might have been or could have been or should have been. And that as soon as you drop into what really is, especially if you take it right down to right here, right now, in my body, in this place, on this day, then I would suggest the majority of people, it's not that bad. Certainly those privileged enough to be sitting on Facebook on a, whatever it is, Monday afternoon in February in the West, you know. And so when we can really start to count our blessings and really sit in what is happening now, then perhaps we can find our way more to a relationship of, okay, well, if I can look into my heart and see how do I really want to respond to what is happening now in me, and who do I love enough to hold that heart open to, and see if I can affect their reality also in a positive way. To me, I think that's a really big step in the right direction. But I'm also not suggesting that everybody's fine, and neither am I suggesting that we should all very complacently sit in the acceptance of what is without ever feeling into what might be if we had the courage to change.
Yeah, thank you. So something's just come to my mind, and I'm just going to put it to the group and let's see what happens. Does anyone feel they could offer, if we did this together as a group for a moment, a practice of how we can come into that unknown and hold those polarities without feeling caught in reaction, and engage something sacred to kind of hold them? I wonder, Catherine, if you felt, just particularly put you on the spot, I don't know if you felt I would just to kind of like, if we did something together just for this moment, just to, let's just take 5 minutes to do this together. How can we hold these extremes that are happening in the microcosm of ourselves as part of the world around us?
Yeah, I mean, when you say that, I mean, instantly I'm like, yeah, well, we need to start where we're in health, right?
Exactly.
So I'm quite happy to guide a little practice that orients us to health, and then maybe someone else wants to pick that up and weave that into meeting the difficulty.
Okay, should we do that? Is everyone all right with doing that? I think it'd be nice to offer some really practical to people that are feeling caught in that way. Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, Catherine. I'll let you start.
Yeah. Okay, so if you feel called to listen and engage in this practice, then maybe just notice, just right here, right now, what is it that your body needs to be present to this experience? Is there movement? Is there a breath? And just noticing if you can give yourself the permission to allow greater comfort to be part of your experience. And then, given the vastness of this topic, I'm curious, what resource could you call in from outside of yourself that could support you to meet the vastness that you might be with? It might be something from the natural world, a mountain, a bird. Might be something bigger like the sun or the solar system. It might be something angelic or celestial or ancestral that wants to show up. Maybe just sensing, noticing and feeling what wants to arrive in this moment. Perhaps leaning into trust, trusting whatever might be there for you. And then perhaps begin to start to notice what are the qualities that this resource has. So maybe starting with the physiological qualities, maybe noticing the speed of your resource. Maybe it has a temperature, a texture or colour. And then perhaps leaning into and noticing the energetic qualities of this resource. It may arrive with joy, it may arrive with empathy, or something different. And then maybe turning your attention to the inside and saying, how are you relating right here, right now, with these qualities that you're noticing? What's the impact of this relationship on your experience? How is this resource supporting you in your physiology, in your energetics? And what could you do to amplify the positivity of this experience? Again, it might be movement, might be a breath. And now that you're more anchored into aliveness, into wellness, into health, and I'll pass this on to someone else in the group who may want to add the next piece.
And so from this place of resource, from this place of ground, can we develop a witness consciousness to these more extreme experiences that may be happening around us, or that we may be feeling personally in our lives? Can we notice when something pulls us to one side or the other, when it invites us into a split, to be one side of something or the other side of something? Sensing from this place of center and ground, can we just watch those things rather than following them and getting caught in them? And just widen this space of ground when we notice it. And to watch when these things arrive in our life and in the world around us, but not to lose our consciousness to it, not to lose our sense of presence to it, to just keep rooted in the sense of resource and ground, and to be able to watch it once removed. And to see if we as individuals, as microcosms of this whole, can be anchors for something different. Can be a place where all of this can exist and we don't get pulled into one side or the other. Where we can hold these splits and polarities and have an intention towards wholeness and togetherness. And to bring that intention of togetherness and wholeness into every aspect of our lives, as we've touched on this evening. Looking after our neighbours, taking time to hear the birds, remembering that we are the earth. We're not on her, we are her. And she is us. And having that intention to heal those splits within ourselves. And just opening your eyes and coming back when you're ready. Thank you. Thanks, Catherine. That was really nice to do that. It just came very immediately in me. Just think, like, it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to actually, let's just do it. let's just do this together. It feels really nice to have done that. Thank you.
Beautiful love and wisdom, ladies. Do you want another piece or enough practical?
You can add, yeah, let's go for it. What would you like to add, Julia?
I would like to add really coming into the body. So I would invite really feeling both feet on the ground, really feeling bottom on the chair. And just for a moment, sensing if there is discomfort in the physical body. If there's frustration or tensions. And I would like to invite us to move a little bit. So if the jaw is uncomfortable, or the shoulders are uncomfortable, or the back is uncomfortable, actually my invitation is to exaggerate the discomfort for a moment. So here I've made fists, and to strengthen the sensation, maybe it's the shoulders up to the ears. Don't hold the breath, like keep breathing, but strengthen on a muscular level. Whatever it is, just for a few minutes, make it bigger and bigger and stronger, and really feel whatever it is that you're feeling physically and emotionally, and you can be just as weirdly shaped as you want to be. And then take a bigger breath. Allow your body to move freely as it wishes to move for a few minutes, to wiggle. Take some bigger, freer breaths. Open your legs widely, those knees nice and wide. Armpits I can see. Smiles I can see. Bit of a shake. Makes me want to hand the baton to Susie.
So I invite you to, with that freshly released body, imagine that everything that is on your end of the lemniscatic polarity, all the things you believe, they're here on your right, and they create an enormous circle which cuts through the center of you, and you can reach the end of it with the end of your fingers. But over here on your left are all the things in opposition to that. They create another enormous circle which perfectly meets in the center of you. So now there are two circles. They meet in the center of you. These are all the things you agree with. These are all the things you disagree with. They are their opposites. And I invite you to see those as either or. And so just for a moment, be with either or in your hands. Here they are, there's either and there's or, and there's tremendous amounts of argument and uncertainty. And here we are in these post-truth times, who knows? All of it could be true, none of it could be true, either or. Now, I want to slowly, slowly, slowly see that these circles are not being either or, and they're not two separate circles touching in the middle, but they are two circles who are slowly merging slightly with one another, and they are becoming two circles of and. And you are now sitting in that beautiful yoni shaped piece in the middle, where if I'd ever listened to my maths as a child, I would probably know that this is some part of a Venn diagram and has a name, but I didn't pay any attention, so I've got no idea what it's called. But sitting here in that yoni shaped central piece, you are with and, where there's no conflict, because you're perfectly willing to accept that just because something is true does not mean that what you perceive to be its opposite is not also true. And in that place of and is a great deal of liberty and generosity and peace. Many blessings on the and.
Thank you. That was lovely additions, Julia and Susie. That was so lovely. I really appreciate the invitation to actually engage with what's difficult in our bodies and to remember that.
I just want to add a tiny little piece, if I may. I loved how Susie took us to blessings, and I find myself wanting to include blessings for the computers, for the laptops that enable us to connect. Yeah. Because for sure they have souls too, you know. Blessings for all the technical equipment and all the, I don't know what, but really blessings for it all. Blessings for the rubbish bins that I have been so grateful in this time, for the men who've come to collect it every week, you know, and blessings for the traffic cones, and blessings for really all of it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that practice, Susie. I think that's a lovely way to engage with opposites. I really like that. Thank you. I'm going to make use of that, I think. That was really wonderful contributions. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. I liked that little impromptu. That was good. I hope that was helpful. Oh, okay. So we've only got about 10 minutes left. So I think we'll probably skip to the last question. So what do you see as the real challenges that we're facing at this time? If we really focus on like what really stands out as being key for you at this moment, and what are you personally feeling drawn to as a response to that? Catherine?
I think the piece that I'm with is, how do we unpack the trauma of being in systems of oppression? How do we do the personal healing on that while still living in systems of oppression? Because it's not easy. It's not easy to be in our vulnerability while still in these systems that don't serve us, that extract and exploit from us. And I think there's a lot of really powerful work happening globally on this. I'm really touched by what's happening in the States around the racism piece at the moment, white supremacy. There's such a willingness to step into the arena and unpack that. And what I see with these threads of, you know, capitalism, colonialism, white supremacy, it's like, this is a lifetime's work. And what I've really come to realize is, no, I'm not doing this for me. I don't have children, but I'm doing this for the generations yet to come. I'm not going to see the end conclusion of this, I don't think. I don't think we're going to be going that fast. But I carry the seed of hope, of a vision for a future that's very different to this one. And that keeps me going. That keeps me committed to doing the work on the inside and offering that to my clients. And who knows, you know, maybe there is reincarnation, and maybe I'll get a second time round and get to experience the world that we've all dreamed into being at some other time. But for now, I know that this is going to be considered a time of such great change, and we will be thanked by those who are yet to come.
Thank you. I deeply resonate with what you've said. Thank you. Susie? Oh, you're muted, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I also deeply resonate, and what I'm with kind of exactly follows on or runs beside or something, that because I'm with the incredible necessity for us to find new stories. Our old stories are broken, and I don't believe that we will find our way out of the kind of hamster wheel of those broken stories until we can conceive of new stories. And one of the things that's always blown me away in my life, as someone who's married to a man who likes a bit of, oh God, I can't remember his name. Anyways, a sci-fi writer who's mentally prescient. I've seen how stories of things which seem out of what's remotely possible when they're written can become something we take for granted. So, you know, the kind of sci-fi of the 70s was talking about things like mobile phones, and we were all going, you know, that'll never happen. And now, you know, even a bloody 4-year-old's got a mobile phone these days. And so I just think we desperately need to find those stories, the ones that are going to come true. They might seem unlikely right now, they might seem impossible now, but they're going to come true. And they're going to be a world where we do have equality and harmony and deep, deep, deep respect and reciprocity with all else that lives. I know it can happen. I know it. And so that, yeah, that's what I'm with, is the chasing down of those stories and the trying to create those stories where it's true, we all know how much we are Earth, and therefore how much responsibility we have in the being of what that Earth is.
Thank you. Thanks, Susie. Wonderful, thank you. Echoing all that's been said so far. Julia?
I've got 2 words: responsibility and kindness. And if we all pick up our crisp packets instead of throwing them on the ground, we all take responsibility for our feelings instead of blaming others. And if we can remember when we're afraid that it's not me against you or us against them, it is, as SUZI pointed us towards, and plus and. It's me plus you. It's, as you've labelled it, community resilience. Us humans are a tribal species and we need each other. And we, you know, as everyone's already said, we're a part of nature, and we need it all, and we need to play our part. So responsibility and kindness.
Thank you. Thank you. And I feel inspired, as it's been mentioned. There's a couple of points, well, there's a few points where you've said something, the 3 of you, and I felt moved to tears, but I've just held it back a bit because it's just been so deeply my truth that you've spoken tonight. I'm so grateful for that. And the thing that you mentioned, Catherine, about dreaming our future generations into being, I wonder if we can just finish with that, just for a moment to connect with that. So just to connect with this moment of opportunity where we've been given chance to stop what we were doing, to grow up, to become real human beings, and to take responsibility for our place in this lineage, accepting the ancestors that dreamed us into being, and our responsibility to dream the future generations into being. And for each of us to do what we can to serve that. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so, so much. My heart feels full. My body's tingling. It's a good feeling. I feel like we are, as I think Susie said, we are sending out ripples in the world every time we do something like this. And yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. So depending on where you're watching this, you can find out more information about the lovely women that are speaking on this call. If you're on our Facebook page, on the Facebook event, there are links for Catherine, Julia and Susie for their websites and their work, if you'd like to find out more about what they're up to. And if you're watching this on YouTube, it will be on the description on YouTube. And next week, we'll be speaking on mental well-being. So we've got some lovely gentlemen who I feel like, in the conversations I've had with these gentlemen, we need more men like this in the world, kind of gentlemen. So, so we've got a lovely guy who's doing some work with around suicide prevention, and another lovely gentleman who's supporting people with their mental health through being an ecotherapist. So yeah, looking forward to that conversation next week. And I think that's it. I think that's all I've got to say for now. I think there's probably something else I should be saying, but I've forgotten. But yeah, just thank you so much deeply from my bottom of my heart. And thank you for all the work that you're doing and all that you're doing and being in the world right now. It's been a real honor to share this space with you. So thank you. Go well. Lots of love.
Commute.